just want to give everyone a very warm welcome to the first of our TGI services, which are really going to be just taking themes and talking about them as a church. And today's first theme is all about money. And so we're going to do that, but we just want to just give you just a little heads up. Someone in the church is going to be taking some photographs just for our future use. Most of those photographs will be from behind, but if you specifically don't want to be in any of those photographs, please see myself or Lydia, and we'll make sure that we screen that later. Okay then, so just to let you know that, and so we have the first of our videos. Thank you, guys.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Mel. I'm part of Elam Link. 20 years ago, the Lord has called me and Gerard, my husband, um, um, and answered our prayers, basically to become independent and have a life that will enable us to start a family and provide for our family. Leaving the Philippines, um, and coming across here, the Lord has blessed us abundantly. His grace has been sufficient. And He provided for our needs and our wants. We were able to afford things, and credit was very much readily available for us. Wanting the best for our kids and comfort, we fell into a trap um, of wanting more and more, and we desired more. And as we do, we got into credit. By God's grace, we were able to learn our lesson. We wanted latest gadgets, designer clothes, shoes, going on numerous holidays. As our kids grew up in primary years, we noticed a big difference in their mindset. They become to expect things uh, readily available. They didn't value anything, and our Jared and I were um, disheartened with this. We realized we were partly to blame because they grew up not being grateful. Um, so when we went on holiday, the Lord has taught us one valuable lesson, and I would like to share that with you. On one of our trips home in the Philippines, we went and visited my husband's um, hometown in the province, and we were in this van, and we were traveling, and what we saw were kids going to school, because it was in August, and in August kids were going to school back home. So these young kids going in groups in school, going to school, and they were wearing flip-flops. All I could see were their happy faces, and my husband noticed that they were wearing flip-flops, but they were carrying their shoes, their school shoes they were carrying. So my husband asked, why are they carrying their shoes? Why aren't they wearing it? You know, they're on their way to school. It's such a hassle carrying. And the driver answered and said that uh, their feet get cuts and bruises easily, but they heal easily. But if their shoes get damaged, it won't get repaired as easily. And to us, that was one of the grounding moments that the Lord has impressed on us, to value things. You know, what we have right now, if you think about it, how many shoes have we got? And, so yeah, uh, in retrospect to that conversation, the Lord has helped us change our ways and show our children as well what we should value in life. Um, to be content, Hebrews 13:5 says, and that to be reminded that God's grace is sufficient. And in our walk to godliness, there is great gain in being content with what we have. So that's all I can share. Hope I've inspired you.
So I'm just going to sing this song. You don't have to stand, you can just sit down. Lyrics might come up, so you can just feel free to reflect as I sing, or just join in if you know it. Feel free.
What we've been finding across dozens of studies and thousands of participants across this country is that as a person's levels of wealth increase, their feelings of compassion and empathy go down. And their feelings of entitlement, of deservingness, and their ideology of self-interest increases. In surveys, we found that it's actually wealthier individuals who are more likely to moralize greed being good, and that the pursuit of self-interest is favorable and moral.
The point is, ladies and gentlemen, that greed, for lack of a better word, is good. Greed is right. Greed works. Greed clarifies, cuts through, and captures the essence of the evolutionary spirit. Greed in all of its forms. Greed for life, for money, for love, knowledge, has marked the upward surge of mankind, and greed, you mark my words, will not only save Teldar Paper, but that other malfunctioning corporation called the USA. Thank you very much.
There's a lot of really compelling research coming out from top labs all over the world showcasing the range of things that are undermined as economic inequality gets worse. Social mobility, things we really care about, physical health, social trust, all go down as inequality goes up. Similarly, negative things in social collectives and societies. Things like obesity and violence, imprisonment and punishment are exacerbated as economic inequality increases. Again, these are outcomes not just experienced by a few, but that resound across all strata of society.
When thinking about my experience with money over the last 12 months, a phrase came to mind quite quickly, and that was shifting mindsets. And I think that perfectly sums up what I believe God is trying to teach me personally about money. He is shifting my mindset when it comes to where to invest my money, my attitude towards money, and how often I have fallen into the trap of associating my salary, whether that's big, small, whatever, I've associated my salary with my sense of self-worth. And I think that's very easy to do in the culture that we live in. But to help explain this a little bit, let me give you some context about who I am and what I do and my career up until this point. So for those who don't know me, I'm Lydia. I came to York about getting on 10 years ago to study English at York. And then I went into a career in marketing for about 5 years. And I did that in a few different contexts. I worked for an estate agent and a business consultancy firm. But during those 5 years, I actually faced a redundancy. And when that happened, God put a drive in me to write. And so since then, I have written and published a few fiction books. And through that journey, I ended up about a year ago deciding to leave the security of full-time work. And aside from some of the hours I do here at York Elim, I went self-employed. And that transition meant I was forced to confront a lot of lies I was believing about money. That in not knowing or not having that consistently salary every month, honestly, you can talk to my husband Stephen and he will tell you I went into a frenzy. I got desperate to make money even though we didn't need it. My necessities were met. And I was like, what is going on here? Because I feel a bit worthless because I'm not bringing any money in. And to the point that it started to make me very overprotective about it, as if I couldn't spend on things, even if it looked like a strong investment. And so I really needed to shift my mindset. And there was a bit of a game changer for me when I read this book. It's written by a guy called Kyle Cease, who he isn't a Christian. He used to be a comedian, actually, and an actor over in the US, but I think he now does a lot of motivational speaking and that sort of thing. But it's called The Illusion of Money. And I'm going to read a little section from it, and the section is called The Helens. Now, just a caveat, this is no comment on our lovely Helen who attends here at York Elim, nor is it a comment on anybody called Helen, okay? So I just want to make that clear, but let me just find my little marker here. Okay, so let's imagine 3 people. Let's call them Helen 1, Helen 2, and Helen 3. That's stupid and confusing. Let's call them Helen A, Helen B, and Helen C. Now imagine that we give each Helen $1 million. And let's imagine that each Helen is starting at around the same place financially. They have similar skills, they're a similar age, and other than a few philosophical differences, they are similarly capable. So Helen A gets her $1 million, and she's pretty pumped, as you can imagine. She immediately quits her job and rents a huge luxury apartment so she can throw parties all the time. She gets a new convertible, a wardrobe, a giant Kid Rock statue, and a bunch of new jewelry. At the end of year 1, Helen A has had some short-term fun, but she hasn't evolved very much. Also, she spent almost half of her money already. The average Kid Rock statue goes for around $250K, depending on your provider. Helen B, on the other hand, has learned some basic investing principles and has been to numerous free financial seminars at her local Courtyard by Marriott hotel. She's pretty smart with her money off the bat. She doesn't quit her job, and other than paying off some debt and making a few smart purchases, she invests her money for the future. Let's say she puts almost all of her money into a secure investment that will guarantee a 10% return, which is awesome. Pretty smart, right? At the end of year 1, Helen B still has slightly more money than she started with, a new sense of security, and she has a long-term plan. Like Helen A, though, she hasn't expanded much, even though her money has. Now let's look at Helen C. She decides to use her $1 million only in ways that expand her. Realizing that her job is not really her passion, Helen C actually does quit her job just like Helen A. However, instead of throwing parties and buying overpriced statues of celebrities from the 90s, Helen C uses her free time to learn more about herself. She takes a backpacking trip around Europe because it's always been a dream of hers. She learns so many things about herself and the world that when she returns, she feels like an entirely new person. Feeling a new sense of freedom, Helen C now starts using her time to meditate and do yoga and get her body in shape. She hires a personal trainer and nutritionist and is feeling healthier than ever. As she feels better and better, she starts to have more energy. She is feeling excited and inspired in so many different areas of her creativity. She starts taking painting classes and dance lessons and continues traveling to new places. Does anyone else find this sounds really exhausting? She decides to start a business that brings together all her real passions. Because it feels inspired, she uses her money to invest in starting a podcast and a YouTube channel to share all the gifts and messages that are showing up for her. She also invests money in hiring people to do the work in the business that is not her highest excitement so that she can spend time expanding towards the things that do excite her. At the end of year 1, Helen 1 has spent and invested almost half of her money, but she is building a business and she's feeding her soul, feeling more alive than ever before. And so I really believe we can liken this in a lot of ways to the parable of the talents in Matthew 25. I don't have time to read that now, but the story goes that Jesus tells this story about someone a bit like a business leader who leaves 3 employees with different pots of money while he goes away. 2 of them invest the money and they make profit back, but the other decides to bury his money, and then the business leader comes back and he explains that employee is lazy and hasn't made good use of what he's been given. I don't believe that Jesus is actually just talking about money here. I think he's also talking about looking to invest in your life, pointing to a way that we should invest our time, our resources, and how we should invest into other people as well. Now, thinking about those Helens and thinking about Helen C in terms of spending your money to invest in yourself and into your life and into other people, I'm not saying this is confirmation that you should go and buy that sports car because you want to feel the wind going through your hair down the A64. We should be shrewd and sensitive with the way we spend our money, but sometimes we can find ourselves hanging on to it almost as a protection, and there is so much more life beyond that mindset. I can attest to that. I've started to choose to invest money in taking in courses, like editing and proofreading courses, helping towards the publication of my books, and there's been so much joy and challenge and a lot of learning experiences in doing that, and I've seen the way it's blessed other people as well. And so I do really think that it's great to ask these mindset questions and just wondering, does my mindset need to be shifting in the area of money? I encourage you, if you are a praying person, to bring that to God in prayer, but also just to consider that.
Thank you. Guys, if I could have my keynote slide. Thanks, Josh. Money affects all of us, whether we have lots of it or little of it. Money affects who we are, and it affects what we do. And I'm hoping Henry Ford, great, obviously pioneer of the Ford motor cars, said money doesn't change people, it merely unmasks them. And I often ask myself a question a little bit about Helen. What would I do if I won £1 million? Okay, but how would that affect my ministry? How would that affect the things that I buy? What kind of person would it make me if I had that amount of money? And I suppose the big question would be, would it make me a better person or a more selfish person? The average household in the UK presently owes £65,000. The daily interest on that debt is £161 million per day. Interest is paid on that money. The outstanding personal debt of the UK is over £1 trillion. That's not to do with government debt, that's personal debt. The Citizens Advice deal with 1,500 new debt inquiries every day. $40,000 homes were repossessed last year. Someone is declared bankrupt every 5 minutes or so. There are 1.4 million people unemployed. And it costs about £70 to fill a modern car with petrol. Now, just to put that in context, and I don't want to sound as if I'm reminiscing about the past, I bought my first car with a tank of petrol. It was second-hand and falling apart, but my first car was £50. It now costs £70 to fill that car with petrol. Money affects, as we saw in some of those video clips, it affects how society is shaped. It affects politics. It affects people's mental health. Money plays a big part in society, and it plays a big part in our private lives. The average top executive of the top 100 companies earn roughly around 4 million plus per year. The average person in the UK earns about £32,000. So that means that by Wednesday, the 6th of January, the chief executive has earned what you're going to earn for the rest of the year. There seems to be a massive differential, increasingly so in our society, between the haves and the have-not. And that in itself can cause certain levels of disappointment and greed in the way that our society has been modelled and built upon, about taking care of the poor and the ostracised. Bernard Madoff, who I'm sure many of you will be familiar with, greatest scammer of the 20th century, says we either love money and just people or love people and just money. He should have thought that through. This former non-executive chairman of Nasdaq Stock Exchange, he got rich by faking an entire investment enterprise and doing so at the expense of caring charities and ordinary people who put their money and their trust in him. He got a loan from the Royal Bank of Scotland, and that loan was £500 million. The Royal Bank of Scotland failed to do a credit check on him, and that money was lost. That money had to be, during the banking crisis, had to be topped up by the UK government, which was British taxpayers' money, or the banking system could have collapsed as a result of it. We turn our attention away from perhaps some of the world's emphasis on money, and we begin to think about, as Lydia and Mel have touched upon, about what the Bible's got to say about money. And we probably know this, but we need to remind ourselves periodically that there's certain things in life that money can't buy. It can't buy character. Can't buy integrity. And you would think that it buys compassion, but it seems to have the opposite effect. In fact, it's said that when they did when they surveyed, I think 50 millionaires, nearly all of them said that they needed about 25% more than that £1 million to be comfortable, to be happy. Basically, they wanted more. It doesn't necessarily buy you respect or wisdom or faith or love. So we come back to the question of some of the things that Lydia was trying to drill down is, what is it we're looking for in life and how much will it really cost? What makes us happy? I know we have that well-known phrase, money can't buy you happiness. And my father-in-law will say, well, it helps. There was an article in the Atlantic magazine which said that the respondents turn out to be generally a dissatisfied lot, whose money has contributed to deep anxieties involving love and work and family. Indeed, they were so frequently dissatisfied about their sizable fortunes that they considered themselves failures. Financially secure, but feeling incredibly insecure because someone might come along one day and steal their money. Howard Hughes, he says, I'm not a paranoid, deranged millionaire. I'm a billionaire. All Howard Hughes wanted was to enjoy life. But in the pursuit of that, he wanted more and more money. So he inherited incredible health and built a $1 billion empire. He wanted more fame, so he broke into the Hollywood scene and soon became a filmmaker and a star. He wanted more physical and sensual pleasure, and he paid handsomely for those needs to be satisfied. He piloted and built the fastest aircraft in the world. He wanted more power, so he secretly dealt with political favors across 2 US presidential elections. All he ever wanted, he had, and a little bit more. But the truth about Howard Hughes is that he was an incredibly dissatisfied person. At the end of his life, he was emaciated and colourless and dying. His fingernails had become grotesque, inches long. His body was rotten. He had black teeth. He was addicted to drugs. He died with the myth that money could bring him happiness. He died broken and miserable. So the question is, if you had all that money, what would you do?
Lucky. What are you going to do with your share of the money? A car. A big, shiny, silver car. I'll drive all over Hollywood. Show Flugelman a thing or two. What about you? New York. Maybe Paris. A lot of champagne. Parties. Be a big shot for a while. How about you, Ned?
I'm going to start a foundation to help homeless children.
That occurred to me to do that at one point, too.
Oh, well, I meant that I would do that first, and then I would get a big shiny car.
Or after.
Paul the Apostle in the Bible says that the love of money, not money itself, but the love of money is the root of all evil. People do the most atrocious things in order to get more money. In an increasingly secular society, we have lost the willingness to understand that all things being equal, that greedy behavior is not a virtue. It's not virtuous. So how does money impact us? How does it influence us? What motivates us in life? Jesus, when he was asked about paying taxes, made this statement: give to Caesar what is Caesar, and to God what is God. Jesus regards paying taxes as a normal part of life. But his ministry and his life and his word says there's something far more important than just paying our taxes or about the narrative of finances, money. It's about what we give to God, what becomes of our spirit. Then he told this parable. A rich man's land was very productive. He thought to himself, what should I do since I don't have anywhere to store my crops? I tell you what I'll do. I'll tear down my barns and I will build bigger ones. And I will store all my grain and all my goods there. And then I will say to myself, you have had many goods stored up for many years. So therefore, take it easy, eat and drink and enjoy your life. But God said to him, you fool, this very night your life is demanded of you. And the things that you have prepared will belong to someone else. What Jesus is saying here is that there are more important things than just mere wealth. In fact, Jesus in another example says, what does it profit a man that if he should gain the whole world and yet lose his own soul? And so as I draw to a close, I suppose the question is, when we talk about money and value, what kind of value does God place on us? What is our true worth? Is our true worth dictated by our bank account? Is our true worth dictated by the car that we drive? Is our true worth with the status of our job? What does God think of our true worth? So as we draw our conversations to a close, we just want to perhaps ask you to go away and consider these important biblical truths in order that our own values might be shaped by that. If you are our guest today, and perhaps you're not used to a church conversation or biblical conversation, and you want to come and speak to myself or one of the leaders or any of the speakers today, then we would be delighted to have that conversation with you. Sam.